Lack of confidence doesn't just hold you back, it makes you invisible. And that's true. All that potential, all those talents, all those brilliant ideas stay trapped in your mind. Instead of being the lead character in your own life, you become a background figure, waiting on the sidelines. The good news? You have the power to change this. Now is the time to break those chains and step forward. Here's the beginning of your transformation. You will build confidence. You'll stop being afraid to express yourself or take risks. You'll raise your voice and claim your place at the table. Your creativity will flow. Once that fear lifts, your ideas will pour out like a waterfall. You won't just be an executor, you'll become a visionary creator. You will become a confident leader. Instead of worrying about what others think, you'll focus on what you can achieve. Your decisions will be clear, your stance strong. People won't just follow you, they'll look to you for inspiration.
Creativity is more than art. It's a universal skill. It's about using your imagination to create something new and valuable in the world. For years, only certain creative types, designers, artists, writers, were seen as truly creative. But today, creativity drives innovation in every field, from tech giants like Google to small businesses. Companies now depend on everyone's ideas. Research shows 80% of people believe unlocking creativity fuels growth, but only 25% feel they fully use their creative potential. That means talent is wasted. The good news? Everyone can develop creative confidence. It's not about inventing new skills from scratch. It's about unlocking the creativity you already have. A little guidance, practice, and courage can release your imagination, helping you see opportunities and solutions you never thought possible. Creative confidence is the bridge between ideas and action. It's the mindset that says, I can try, I can fail, I can innovate. When you embrace it, you don't need a new career, title, or office. You can be creative right where you are. So, start small. Experiment. Imagine. Take action. Your ideas, big or small, can make a difference. Everyone has the potential. Unlock yours today.
Unconsciously or consciously, fixed mindset people harbor a deeply ingrained belief that everyone is born with only a certain amount of intelligence and a certain amount of talent. When invited to embark on the journey of creative confidence, fixed mindset people will choose to remain in their comfort zone, for fear that they might reveal the limits of their abilities to others. Dweck discovered the self-limiting nature of the fixed mindset when studying the behavior of first-year students at the University of Hong Kong. Because all classes and exams at the university are in English, new students who struggle with English face a distinct disadvantage. Dweck, who assessed the students' language skills and mindsets, asked the new students a question. If the faculty offered a course for students who needed to improve their English skills, would you attend? Their responses revealed the power of mindset. The growth mindset students offered an empathetic yes, but the fixed mindset ones were largely uninterested. In other words, those under the influence of the fixed mindset were willing to sabotage their chances for long-term success rather than expose a potential weakness. If they allow this same logic to guide their lifelong choices, it's easy to see how such rigid and limited perceptions of their own abilities become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The growth mindset, on the other hand, is the passport to new adventures. When you open your mind to the possibility that your abilities might be limitless and unknown, you're ready to lace up your running shoes and compete. In reality, we all have a little bit of both mindsets. Sometimes the fixed mindset whispers in one ear, "We've never been good at creativity. Why bother ourselves now?" The growth mindset whispers in the other, "Effort is the path to mastery. Let's at least try." The question to ask is, which voice will you listen to? Leave your dent in the universe.
With your creative confidence comes the desire to proactively steer the course of your life or your company, rather than being driven by the wind. Roger Martin, the dean of the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, once told us that the most remarkable aspect of designers is that they always operate with a sense of purpose. While others think unconsciously, for designers, everything, from how they organize their bookshelves to how they present their endeavors, is a conscious and authentic choice. When they look at the world, they see opportunities to do what they do better and feel a desire to make a difference.
Whether it's designing a new garden, starting a new company, or writing a new piece of code, once you start creating things, you begin to realize that everything has a purpose behind it. Everything in modern society is the result of a series of decisions someone made. Why shouldn't that person be you? When you unleash your creative confidence in everything from hosting a banquet to managing a meeting, you begin to see new ways to improve the status quo. Once you recognize these opportunities, you need to start seizing them. For us, this focused purposefulness was one of Steve Jobs' defining characteristics. David met Steve in the 1970s when they designed the first Apple II. They became friends over the course of a dozen projects for Steve's ventures at Apple, Next, and Pixar. Steve never took the path of least resistance. He didn't accept the world as it was. He did everything with a purpose. No detail was too small to escape his attention. He pushed us beyond what we thought we could do. We experienced his reality distortion field firsthand. Even when it seemed illogical, he always kept raising the bar. We tried and quickly realized that we could always reach the crazy, insane road sign on our own. One day, after Steve had been forced out of Apple and was planning to establish the company that would later become Next Computer, he came to David's office to discuss his vision for the new machine. Steve, who always sought Zen simplicity, asked David, "What's the world's simplest three-dimensional shape?" David was sure it was the sphere, but it didn't matter because the answer Steve was looking for was the cube. This is how the suggestion began for us to help Steve with the engineering design of his cube-shaped Next Computer. During this intense project, Steve would frequently call David at home in the middle of the night, in the pre-email and pre-texting era, to insist that we make certain changes. Which urgent matters couldn't wait until morning? One night, they had a discussion about whether the plating on a screw inside the cast magnesium cube should be cadmium or nickel. David responded with something like, "Come on, Steve, that darn thing is inside the box." But Steve still cared, and of course we made the change. We don't know if any Next customer ever opened the machine to see those perfectly plated parts, but Steve wouldn't leave such details to chance. Steve had a deep sense of creative confidence. He believed, in fact, he knew, that if you had the necessary courage and tenacity, you could achieve audacious goals. He famously articulated his advice to leave a dent in the universe in a 1994 interview. The minute that you understand that you can poke life and that if you poke it, something will come out the other side. That you can change it, you can mold it, that's maybe the most important thing. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again. Steve's message was that we all have the ability to change the world. This was certainly true for a visionary man like Steve, who impacted the lives of so many people and encouraged us all to think different. From Doug Dietz to Steve Jobs, all the people with creative confidence whose paths we've crossed found a way to expend extraordinary energy and make a remarkable impact. As you move forward and gain creative confidence, we know you'll find the chance to leave your own dent in the universe. Set out with a growth mindset, with the belief that your true potential is still unknown. Believe that you are not limited only by what you've been able to do before. In the chapters ahead, we will offer practical tools to help you acquire new skills, find new sources of inspiration, and unleash more of your creative capacity. To do this, you'll need to take action and experience your own creativity firsthand. But to take action, most of us first need to overcome the fears that have held back our creativity in the past. Dare. From fear to courage. Imagine a boa constrictor wrapped around a man's neck. In the next room, a woman wearing a hockey mask and leather gloves stands cautiously behind a one-way mirror watching them. Her heart is pounding. She has been afraid of snakes for as long as she can remember. Gardening and hiking are out of the question. A small snake might cross her path. Yet there she stands, about to enter the next room and touch the snake of her nightmares. How does she do this? How does she transition from fear to courage? The brain behind phobia therapy, which has paved the way for thousands like that woman, is the psychologist Albert Bandura. A Stanford researcher and professor, Bandura has made a profound impact on the world of social learning and has earned the title of the greatest living psychologist. In one published list of 20th century psychologists, he was preceded only by Sigmund Freud, B.F. Skinner, and Jean Piaget. Today, at 87 years old and emeritus professor, Bandura still continues his work in his Stanford office. One day, the conversation turned to how he cured snake phobias. Bandura told us that it fundamentally required a lot of patience and small, gradual steps, but he and his colleagues could sometimes cure a lifelong phobia in less than a day. Bandura begins by telling people with severe phobias that there's a snake in the next room, and that they will eventually go inside. The usual reaction is, "No way." Then he guides them through a long, carefully designed process in which every step is achievable. At one point, he has them watch a man holding the snake through a one-way mirror and asks, "What do you think this thing is going to do?" People with snake phobias often believe it will wrap around the man's neck and strangle him, but what they actually see is the opposite. The snake just hangs there lazily, not squeezing, not attacking, not doing anything dangerous. The process continues with small but meaningful steps. Later, Bandura asks participants to stand in the doorway of the room where the snake is. It's a frightening moment, so he stands beside them. After many gradual steps, the participants eventually get close enough to stand right next to the snake. By the end of the session, they're able to touch it, and their phobia is gone. Bandura calls this method guided mastery. It relies on the power of first-hand experiences that disprove false beliefs. It uses psychological tools such as modeling, social persuasion, and graded tasks. The idea is to help people face a big fear and overcome it through small, manageable steps. But the most surprising discovery came months later during follow-up interviews. People didn't just report that their snake phobia was gone. They also described life changes that had nothing to do with snakes. They had tried horseback riding, spoken in front of audiences, explored new opportunities at work. Overcoming a lifelong phobia had transformed their belief in their own ability to change. It reshaped what they thought they were capable of. Some of the same people who once needed a hockey mask to get close to a snake were now acting with confidence and courage. This led Bandura to a new line of research. How do people develop the belief that they can succeed? His studies showed that when people gain this belief, they take on tougher challenges, persist longer, and show greater resilience. He called this belief self-efficacy. Bandura's work confirms what we have seen for years. Doubts about one's creative ability can be improved through small, structured experiences of success. And these experiences can have a powerful long-term impact. What Bandura calls self-efficacy is closely related to what we call creative confidence. People with creative confidence make better choices, explore new directions, and solve problems more effectively. They see new possibilities for improving the world around them and collaborate with others to bring those possibilities to life. They approach challenges with newfound courage. But to reach this strong and creative mindset, sometimes you have to face your own snakes. And in our experience, the biggest snake in the room is often the fear of failure, the fear of being judged, the fear of starting, the fear of the unknown. Many things have been said about it, but ultimately it must be overcome one small step at a time. Even though failure has been talked about for centuries, it still remains the single biggest obstacle people face on the road to creative success. A common myth suggests that creative geniuses rarely fail. But according to Professor Dean Keith Simonton of the University of California, the truth is exactly the opposite. From Mozart to Darwin, creative geniuses are highly productive when it comes to failure. They simply don't let those failures stop them. Research shows that creative people run more experiments, try more ideas, and take more risks. That's why their brilliant breakthroughs seem to appear more often. Not because they succeed more frequently, but because they try more often. In short, they take more shots at the target, and this leads to the surprising math of innovation. If you want more success, you must be willing to shrug off more failures. Take Thomas Edison, for example. One of history's most prolific inventors, Edison was shaped by failure. For him, an experiment wasn't a failure as long as it produced useful learning. He invented the incandescent light bulb, but only after learning from 1,000 unsuccessful attempts. He used to say, "The real measure of success is the number of experiments you can fit into a day." In fact, early failures can be essential for innovation. The faster you uncover weaknesses in an idea, the sooner you can improve the solution. We grew up in Ohio, the home of aviation pioneers Orville and Wilbur Wright. Today, the Wright brothers are remembered for their first flight in 1903, but focusing only on that moment hides the hundreds of trials and failed attempts that came before it. Some stories even suggest they chose the remote area of Kitty Hawk precisely because the press was less likely to watch their repeated failures. Here is the real truth about innovation. If you want more success, you must be prepared for more failure. Edison and the Wright brothers may feel like stories from a distant past, but the tradition of deliberate trial and error is still very much alive today. When Steelcase set out to reinvent the old-fashioned school desk, the stiff wooden version with the writing surface bolted onto the side, our design team built over 200 prototypes in every imaginable shape and size. At first, they worked with tiny mock-ups and paper models. Later, they produced plywood components and attached them to existing chairs. They visited local universities, asked students and professors to interact with these experience models, and collected feedback. They carved foam shapes, printed parts on 3D printers, created steel mechanisms, and as production approached, built fully realistic, full-scale models. All of this relentless experimentation and the learning it produced paid off. The result was the Node chair, which replaced the fixed, rigid school desk with a rotating seat, an adjustable work surface, wheels for mobility, and a tripod base for backpacks. It created a flexible classroom that could shift from lecture mode to group work in seconds. Introduced in 2010, the Node chair is now used in more than 800 schools and universities around the world. Neither Edison, nor the Wright brothers, nor the designers of the Node chair were embarrassed by trial and error. In fact, they embraced it. They saw failure not as something to avoid, but as one of the most valuable teachers in the creative process. And that is the quiet secret of creative success. Don't fear trying. Don't fear failing, learn fast, and keep going. Ask any inventor and they'll likely have an impressive collection of war stories about the failures they faced on the road to success. Albert Bandura used the process of guided mastery, a series of small, manageable successes, to help people build courage and overcome deep-rooted phobias. What would be almost impossible to tackle in one leap becomes achievable through small steps taken under the guidance of someone experienced in that area. In the same way, we use a step-by-step approach to help people explore and experience the tools and methods of design thinking. By gradually increasing the level of challenge, we help individuals overcome the fear of failure that often blocks their best ideas. These small wins act as rewards and motivate people to move on to the next level. In our classes and workshops, we first ask people to work on quick design tasks, such as redesigning the gift-giving experience or rethinking the daily commute between home and work. We may offer brief guidance or encouragement, but for the most part, we expect them to discover solutions on their own. Gaining confidence through hands-on experience encourages more creative actions in the future, which in turn reinforces that confidence. This is why we typically ask students and team members to complete many rapid design projects rather than one large one, maximizing the number of learning cycles. At the D School, one of the goals of bringing people together to work on a project is to help them apply new skills, challenge themselves, and, quite likely, experience failure along the way. The lessons learned from these failures make us smarter and even stronger. We believe it does. But the truth is, failure is actually more fun. Still, most of us instinctively try to avoid failure at all costs. Failure is difficult, sometimes even painful. As Stanford professor Bob Sutton and IDEO partner Diego Rodriguez often say at the D School, failure sucks, but it educates. The inevitable connection between failure and innovation is a lesson you can only learn by doing. By giving students the chance to fail as early as possible, we maximize the learning that follows. Instead of long lectures followed by exercises, most DIA school classes begin with a bit of guidance and then immediately move students into a project or task. Afterwards, we evaluate their work so they can reflect on what succeeded and what they can learn from what didn't. As IDEO partner and consulting associate professor Chris Flink explains, in many D school classes, student teams are asked to push the boundaries of possibility, right up until they hit the wall. The personal resilience, courage, and humility that come from a healthy failure provide invaluable opportunities for learning and growth. Confronting failure to overcome fear is something lifelong inventor and Klutz Press founder John Cass Cassidy has always understood intuitively. In his book, Juggling for the Complete Klutz, Cass doesn't start beginners with 2 balls or even 1. He starts with something far more fundamental: dropping. In the first step, you toss 3 balls into the air and let them fall to the ground. Then you repeat. When learning to juggle, the challenge comes from the failure, the balls hitting the floor. That's why in step 1, Cass gets would-be jugglers comfortable with that reality. It aims to normalize the experience. Dropping the ball becomes more natural than keeping it in the air. Once you overcome the fear of failure, juggling becomes much easier. At first, both of us approach this method with skepticism, but with this simple technique, we truly learned how to juggle. The fear of failure keeps us from acquiring new skills, taking risks, and stepping into new challenges. Creative confidence asks us to overcome that fear. You know you'll drop the ball, you'll make mistakes, and you'll take a wrong turn or two. But you accept that this is part of the learning process, and throughout that process, you maintain your confidence. Because despite the setbacks, you keep moving forward, overcoming the fear of meeting customers. From our experience, we know that students often fear facing customers and users, even when they are trying to build empathy. At D School, instructor Caroline O'Connor and director Sarah Stein Greenberg have helped many students overcome this fear step by step. Here are some empathy-building techniques they recommend, adapted for professional use. They start easy and gradually become more challenging. Be a fly on the wall in an online forum. Observe potential customers who share feedback, express frustrations, or ask questions. Without directly engaging at first, pay attention to feelings. You're not looking for evaluations of features or costs. You're searching for pain points and hidden needs among forum participants. Try out your own customer service. Interact with your customer service team as if you were a customer. Notice how your issue is resolved and pay attention to your emotions throughout the process. Try mapping out each step and chart the ups and downs of your mood or satisfaction along the way. Talk to unexpected experts. What does the receptionist think about your company's customer experience? If you're in healthcare, speak with the medical assistant instead of the doctor. If you manufacture a physical product, ask a repair technician where problems usually arise. Play detective in search of insights. Bring something to read and a pair of headphones, then visit a retail store, industry conference, or any place where people gather. Observe how they behave and try to understand what's happening. How are they interacting with your product or service? Pay attention to body language. What conclusions can you draw about their attention or interest levels? Talk to some customers. Prepare a few open-ended questions about your product or service. Go to a place where your customers spend time and find someone approachable. Let them know you'd like to ask a few questions. If they decline, that's fine. Try someone else. Sooner or later, you'll find someone willing, maybe even eager to talk. With each answer, dig deeper. Ask questions like, why? Or, can you tell me more? Even if you think you already know the answer, sometimes the responses will surprise you and reveal new opportunities. We can all learn something about effort and failure from the world of games. Author, futurist, and game designer Jane McGonigal recently suggested that video games can actually help cultivate a unique kind of creative confidence. She makes a compelling case. By harnessing the power of video games, we can make a real impact in our everyday lives. In the world of video games, task difficulty and rewards scale with a player's skills. Progress always requires focused effort. But here's the twist. The next goal is never completely out of reach. Why does this matter? This is what Jane calls urgent optimism. The drive to take immediate action to overcome an obstacle because you genuinely believe success is possible. Players always hold on to the idea that a legendary win is achievable and worth trying again and again. Have you ever noticed how kids show this same kind of perseverance when learning to walk or shoot a basketball? They gradually gain mastery step by step, learning through repeated attempts. Tom witnessed urgent optimism firsthand one Christmas morning when his son Sean decided to try the Tony Hawk skateboarding video game. But this wasn't just a game on a screen. It came with a controller shaped like a real skateboard, minus the wheels. Suddenly, Sean was balancing on it in the living room, performing tricks as 3 generations of the Kelly family watched. On screen, Sean's character slammed into brick walls, tumbled over railings, and collided with other skaters. And in real life? Sean fell off the controller multiple times, nearly crashing into a nearby glass table. So, did all these failures stop him? Not at all. Here's the question. If failure in a game feels just as intense as failure in real life, but doesn't crush our motivation, what does that say about how we perceive risk and effort? Could the lessons from Sean's relentless attempts in the living room, falling, getting up, trying again, teach us something about building our own creative confidence? As Sean continued, he began to discover the limits of his own abilities. With each level he progressed, each small success, his mindset transformed. Could it be that learning through playful challenges, through repeated failures that feel safe, actually prepares us for real-life creativity and resilience? He knew he was on a learning journey. In fact, video games were essentially a way to avoid reading or confronting the fear of inadequacy. By leveraging the best aspects of gaming culture, he could channel determination and perseverance toward overcoming failure. For instance, in a team setting, it's possible to create an environment where everyone's ideas are fairly considered and meritocracy genuinely matters. People who believe victory is achievable tend to work harder, persevere longer, and maintain an optimistic outlook. Even after overcoming the fear of initial failure and gaining creative confidence, continuous practice is essential. Like muscles, creative abilities grow and strengthen with regular exercise. Maintaining your form requires ongoing practice. All breakthroughs start with creative intuition. Which needs should you focus on? Which ideas should you pursue? What should you prototype? Experience and intuition come into play here. Diego Rodriguez, on his blog Metacool, notes that innovative thinkers often rely on unconscious intuition to identify core needs or key features. In other words, relentless practice builds a database of experience you can use to make more informed choices. Diego argues that when bringing new things into the world, the number of product cycles, mileage, often outweighs years of experience. A veteran in the automotive industry with decades of experience may have gone through fewer cycles than a software developer who has been iterating on mobile apps for just 2 years. The more rapid innovation cycles you experience, the more you acclimate to the process and gain confidence in evaluating new ideas. This confidence in turn reduces anxiety when facing uncertainty while introducing new ideas to the world. Permission to fail. Whether you see yourself as a born inventor or have just begun exploring creative confidence, giving yourself and those around you permission to make mistakes can accelerate the generation of new ideas. The permission to fail is easier to grant in some environments than others. Venture capitalist Randy Komisar notes that what sets entrepreneurial hubs like Silicon Valley apart is not just their successes, but how they handle failure. In cultures that support entrepreneurs, the concept Komisar calls constructive failure receives greater appreciation and understanding. Fear of risk and failure was a central focus in ADO's collaboration with German entrepreneur Lars Hinrichs to reinvent European venture capital. Research with developers in both the US and Europe found that transitioning from a stable corporate job to the uncertainty of a startup was often the scariest moment in a new venture's development. Many never took the leap. The comfort and security of a salaried position kept even the boldest entrepreneurs from acting. To make this transition less intimidating, Heinrich structured offerings at his new investment firm, HackFWD, to provide support. Entrepreneurs were given resources and a support network, allowing them to focus on what they did best. Under HackFWD's entrepreneurial agreement, published on the company website, entrepreneurs receive roughly their current salary for 1 year while developing their concept to the beta stage. Closer to generating revenue and reaching profitability, they are also connected to a network of experienced advisors. Leaving a steady job remains a daunting step, but maintaining income for a year makes it easier to pursue fresh ideas. Large companies have also begun similar efforts to reduce perceived risks and show commitment to innovation initiatives. For instance, VF Corporation, the world's largest apparel company, owner of well-known brands from Nautica to North Face, launched an internal innovation fund a few years ago. Led by Stephen Dull, VP of Strategy and Innovation, the fund supports ideas in their early stages, allowing business unit managers to take entrepreneurial risks while still meeting performance targets in their existing product lines. A successful innovation fund project explored whether Wrangler, a brand once popular among cowboys in the western US, could be adapted to appeal to India's young, highly active motorcycle riding market. The result was a denim collection with features like waterproof fabrics, designed for this dynamic audience. To date, VF's Innovation Fund has sponsored over 97 such inventive initiatives worldwide. We all need the freedom to experiment with new ideas, find ways to grant yourself artistic or creative license, or give yourself a get-out-of-jail-free card, like in Monopoly. Treat your next idea as an experiment, and let everyone know you are just trying something out. By lowering others' expectations, you allow failure to become a learning experience without harming your career. If you want, I can also make a more concise, punchy version, suitable for a blog or LinkedIn post that keeps "Embrace your failures." An old saying reminds us, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. Yet, to truly learn from failure, you must own it. You need to understand what went wrong and figure out what you can do better next time. If you don't, you risk repeating the same mistakes in the future. Acknowledging your errors is also crucial for progress. By doing so, you not only avoid the psychological dangers of covering up, making excuses, or feeling guilty, but you also elevate your character through honesty, sincerity, and humility. When you ask financial services professionals about their recent performance, you'll likely hear a lot of fudging because they either ignore their losses or try to mask them with terms like market adjustments or industry downturns. Yet one of our favorite examples of a company owning its failures comes from the financial services sector itself. Bessemer Venture Partners, a century-old, highly respected venture capital firm that has been part of founding some exceptionally successful companies, maintains what they call an anti-portfolio. As expected, their website highlights top exits. But what's especially fascinating and less predictable is that Bessemer also documents a catalog of missed opportunities and failed predictions. According to the firm, our long and interesting history has presented our firm with an unprecedented number of opportunities to fail completely. One partner missed the chance to invest in PayPal's initial round, which was later sold for $1.5 billion. The firm also passed on investing in FedEx, now valued at over $30 billion. Not just once, but 7 times. David Cowan, a partner and one of the strongest advocates for the anti-portfolio, plays a central role in telling these stories of missed opportunities and failures. Cowan, who once lived within walking distance of the Silicon Valley garage where Larry Page and Sergey Brin started Google, was introduced to the founders through a mutual acquaintance. Cowan's response, "How can I leave this house without walking past your garage?" Bessemer's anti-portfolio reflects a growing trend among conscious individuals and organizations to shed light on failures and learn from this objective reflection. Forbes' Midas list has recognized Cowan as one of the world's top venture capitalists, in part because of his ability to turn new investments into gold. Could embracing failure have paved the way for this extraordinary success? Look around, and you'll notice other signs of this mindset shift. Failure conferences are being held in Silicon Valley and elsewhere. Author and educator Tina Seelig asks her students to write a failure resume, highlighting their biggest setbacks. Intelligent people accustomed to emphasizing their successes often find this exercise challenging. Yet through the process of compiling a failure resume, they come to emotionally and mentally own their defeats. In her book, What I Wish I Knew. When I was 20, Tina writes, viewing experiences through the lens of failure forces people to reconcile with the mistakes they made along the way. She courageously shares her own failures, from not prioritizing company culture early in her career to avoiding conflicts in personal relationships. Now, more aware and open about her early mistakes, Tina refuses to let them hold her back. As the executive director of Stanford's Technology Ventures program, she is shaping the entrepreneurial leaders of tomorrow. The fear of judgment is learned at a young age. But we don't start out on life's path burdened by this fear. Most children are naturally brave. They explore new games, meet new people, try new things, and allow their imaginations to run wild. In our family, this fearlessness first appeared through a do-it-yourself attitude. If the washing machine broke, we didn't call a repairman. Instead, we would go over to the machine, take it apart, and try to fix it ourselves. That was the unspoken rule. Our home believed we could repair things. Of course, sometimes home projects went awry. Once, in the middle of moving, we realized that putting things back together wasn't nearly as fun as taking them apart. Something that had once been a musical instrument transformed into a collection of art objects. The harp-like bundle of strings from that piano still rests embedded in the wall of my old basement room, while the beautiful set of 88 wooden keys is now mounted on a wall in David's studio. There was also tolerance for artistic freedom. A perfect red bicycle received as a birthday gift could be sanded down and painted neon green the next day, just for fun, without a single accusatory word. As children, we didn't know we were creative. We only knew that it was okay to experiment, to succeed sometimes and fail other times. We trusted that if we kept creating and tinkering, something interesting might emerge. David's third-grade best friend, Brian, had a different experience with creativity. One day, David and Brian were sitting at a table with half a dozen classmates during art class. Brian was working on a sculpture making a horse out of clay the teacher kept under the sink. Suddenly, one of the girls saw what he was making, leaned over and said, "That's awful. It doesn't look like a horse at all." Brian's shoulders slumped. His spirits crushed, he squeezed the clay horse in his hands and threw it in the trash. David never saw Brian attempt a creative project again. How often does something like this happen in childhood? Whenever we share Brian's story of lost confidence with business audiences, someone always speaks up about a similar experience where a teacher, parent, or peer unintentionally cause them to shut themselves down. Let's admit it, children can be brutally honest with one another. Sometimes people decide they weren't creative as kids. They remember a striking moment. Instead of being judged, they simply withdrew. They stopped believing they were creative altogether. Brené Brown, a writer and researcher who has studied countless shame experiences, found that 1 in 3 people could recall a creativity deficit, a particular event in which they were told they weren't talented as a musician, writer, or singer. When a child loses confidence in their creativity, the impact can be profound. People begin to categorize the world into those who are creative and those who are not. They forget that they once enjoyed drawing or telling imaginative stories and assume these categories are fixed. They often choose not to be creative. The tendency to label ourselves as untalented goes far beyond the fear of judgment. With schools cutting arts funding and high-stakes standardized testing, dominating students' futures, creativity has been devalued compared to traditional core subjects like math and science. These subjects emphasize methods of thinking and problem-solving with a single right answer, whereas many real-world problems of the 21st century require more open-minded approaches. Well-meaning teachers and parents steer young people toward conventional careers, inadvertently diminishing their creative confidence. They were subtly sending the message that pursuits involving creativity are very risky and fall outside general societal norms. We both know what that feels like. Our guidance counselors suggested that when we graduated from high school, we should stay near Akron, Ohio, and work in local tire companies. They thought we were dreamers for looking beyond the familiar. Had we followed their advice, IDEO or the D School wouldn't exist today. Education expert Sir Ken Robinson argues that traditional schooling kills creativity. We are running national education systems where the worst thing you can do today is make a mistake, he says. Education is supposed to develop our natural abilities and help us find our own way in the world. Instead, it suppresses many students' individual talents and abilities, killing their motivation to learn. Teachers, parents, business leaders, and any role models around us have the power to either nurture or stifle creative confidence. One discouraging comment from the wrong mentor can be enough to derail our creative efforts. Fortunately, most of us are resilient enough to try again. Sir Ken once shared an unforgettable story about talent on the verge of being wasted. Born in Liverpool, he had a conversation with Paul McCartney and made a striking discovery. Apparently, the legendary singer and songwriter hadn't excelled in music classes. His high school music teacher neither gave him good grades nor believed he had any musical talent. George Harrison had the same teacher, and similarly failed to stand out in music class. Sir Ken, astonished, asked McCartney, "Did I understand correctly? This teacher taught you while you were in the Beatles and didn't notice anything extraordinary?" Had McCartney and Harrison sought the safe path, they might have ended up working in Liverpool's traditional manufacturing and shipping industries. Yet that safe path would have led them straight into an economic collapse. Liverpool's heavy industry declined sharply over the next 20 years, causing massive unemployment, and eventually the Liverpool Institute High School itself. Closed music fans should be grateful that McCartney and his friends, John, George, and Ringo, found courage elsewhere. The Beatles went on to become one of the most successful and beloved bands of all time. Much later, having gained fame, wealth, and even being knighted by the Queen, Sir Paul McCartney felt compelled to help others seize the creative opportunities he had nearly lost. After the closure of the Liverpool Institute and the unemployment of the music teacher and the rest of the school staff, McCartney helped restore the 19th century school building from ruin. Together with educator Mark Featherstone Whitty, he established the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, providing talented young people with a thriving creative environment where they could develop practical skills in music, acting, and dance. Stop comparing. It takes courage to leave behind the comfort of certainty and what we already know, to try a new approach, or to share an idea that sounds downright crazy, In her research on vulnerability, Brené Brown spoke with individuals to understand what made them feel inadequate and to explore the persistent thought of not being enough. As Brown writes, if our self-esteem isn't at stake, we're rarely willing to take the risk of being brave and sharing our raw talents and abilities. According to Brown, one way to embrace creativity is to stop comparing yourself to others. If you're worried about fitting in or measuring up to others' achievements, you can't fully engage in the risk-taking and pioneering processes that creative endeavors demand. Over the years, we've noticed in the teams we've worked with that when people feel insecure, they rarely perform at their best. If they don't feel respected by peers or leaders, they focus on self-promotion. Instead of concentrating on their work and taking pride in their output, they become distracted by what others might think. Once insecurity takes root, it can create a vicious cycle. That's why, whether you're working alone or in a team, it's crucial to address insecurity at the first opportunity. Praise others when appropriate. Pay attention to signs that someone around you feels undervalued or has lost confidence. Have the difficult conversations to surface the issue, because until insecurity is addressed, it becomes like a family secret. Everyone knows, but no one talks about. These conversations can be uncomfortable or even painful, but they are usually worth it in the long run. At ADEO, we've observed this pattern dozens of times. New employees initially operate from insecurity or hesitancy, trying to demonstrate best behaviors. Over time, their guard drops. You see this transformation in the way they dress and in how they behave around figures of authority. As they gain confidence, they adopt a come-as-you-are attitude and become vulnerable in creative contexts. This vulnerability, along with the ability to trust those around them, can help overcome many obstacles to creative thinking and constructive action. Our experiences reflect recent research on resilience. Resilient people not only excel at problem solving, but are also more likely to ask for help, receive strong social support, and connect effectively with colleagues, family, and friends. Resilience is often viewed as a solitary effort, the lone hero who falls but rises again to fight. In reality, seeking help from others is often a strategic path to success. It doesn't have to be an admission of weakness. We need others to navigate setbacks, overcome challenges, and recover. Have you ever sat in a playground and watched a child go down a slide for the first time? That first experience is intimidating for most children. At first, they may not even want to climb the ladder. Their face shows fear, a look that says, "What do you want me to do?" We know it's safe, but they don't. Initially, they may just need lots of support and encouragement to climb the ladder. Some make it halfway, get scared, and climb back down. Finally, after watching other children shout, "Woohoo!" as they slide down, they reach the top rung and let go of their fear for the first time. That's the magical moment. Fear is replaced by joy and excitement. Sometimes when they notice how fast they went, their eyes light up with a huge smile as they reach the ground. They rush back to climb again and slide down. The greatest obstacle is taking that first ride down the slide. We see the same joy on the faces of managers, scientists, salespeople, CEOs, and students who go through their first design cycles and come out on the other side with a safe, promising idea. They try new skills with the tools in their toolbox, like a child riding a bike without training wheels for the first time. Long ago, poet and essayist Ralph Waldo Emerson encouraged us by saying, "Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain." While the certainty of Emerson's claim may be debatable, the spirit of his advice remains powerful even today. Looking back on our lives, we can probably recall things that once seemed scary. Jumping off a diving board, taking a bite of an unusual exotic food, or stepping onto a stage. But once we tried them, they weren't nearly as frightening as we imagined. Yet, despite all those successful and enjoyable experiences, when we face unknown territory, we still cling to our fears. Courage is simply the accumulation of small steps, and by taking those steps, you will have more options in how you move forward. Throughout life, forces can either bring us closer to our creative potential or pull us away. A teacher's praise, a parent's criticism, tolerance shown for mistakes, or an environment that embraces new ideas. But ultimately, what matters most is believing in your capacity to create positive change and having the courage to act. Creativity depends far less on rare gifts or special skills, and far more on believing in what you can do with the abilities and talents you already possess. Moreover, you can develop these skills further, add new ones, and build upon them using the methods described in later sections. After all, as Hungarian essayist György Konrad once said, courage is simply the accumulation of small steps. Choose. Creativity. The first step to becoming more creative is deciding that you want to be. Think like a traveler. Try to see your surroundings with fresh eyes as if you were visiting a foreign country. Even the most ordinary or familiar things can appear new. Don't wait for a magical spark. Open yourself to new ideas and experiences. Pay attention. Relaxedly. Insights often strike when your mind is at ease and not focused on a specific task. This allows your brain to form new connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Empathize with your end users. When you understand the needs and situations of the people you are designing for, you can generate more inventive ideas. Observe in the field. By observing others with the curiosity of an anthropologist, you can discover opportunities that aren't obvious at first glance. Ask questions starting with why. A series of why questions can strip away surface-level details and get to the heart of the matter. For example, asking someone why they still use outdated technology, like landline phones, can reveal answers rooted more in psychology than in utility. Redefine challenges. Sometimes the first step toward a big solution is redefining the problem. Approaching it from a different perspective can help you uncover its essence. Build a creative support network. Creativity flows more easily and can be more enjoyable when you collaborate and brainstorm with others. Choose creativity. Psychologist Robert Sternberg, who has spent over 30 years studying intelligence, reasoning, creativity, and leadership, found one common trait among creative individuals. At some point, they made the conscious decision to be creative. Along the way, they tend to share certain habits. They redefine problems in ways that allow them to find solutions. They take calculated risks and embrace failure as part of the innovation process. They confront obstacles that arise when questioning the status quo. They tolerate uncertainty when they aren't sure they are on the right path. Rather than letting their skills or knowledge stagnate, they continue to grow mentally. Sternberg says, if psychologists want to teach creativity, they should encourage people to make a creative choice, highlight the joys that this decision can bring, and also prepare them for the challenges that come with it. Deciding to be creative does not guarantee that creativity will emerge. But without this decision, it will never happen. Creativity rarely takes the path of least resistance. It must be consciously chosen. One example of how powerful this choice can be is Jill Levinson. She spent 6 years in advertising among a group of creatives, a club to which she did not belong. Before a friend's Cinco de Mayo party, she shared a piñata cookie recipe on social media. These 3-layered cookies had a hidden space for tiny candies, appealing to people's imagination. Within a week, her idea had been shared over 500 times. Jill continued, and people were genuinely delighted with her style. When her followers surpassed 100,000, Pinterest took notice, and by the end of 2012, Jill had 1 million followers. Jill says this experience sparked her creative confidence. During her advertising days, she often saw herself as outside the world of creatives. Now, she believes sites like Pinterest provide powerful tools for creative expression because the barrier to entry is incredibly low, giving everyone a chance to apply their creativity. Here, I feel more ownership over the fact that I've created something to be proud of, Jill says. Even if what I make isn't the world's most amazing or creative thing, it can still be valuable. Today, Jill sees her client work as creative as well. She knows that being creative doesn't mean starting from scratch or being a lone inventor. Contributing and adding your touch is creative too. Think like a traveler. When facing routine or challenges, observe your surroundings as a traveler exploring a foreign world. Adopt a beginner's mind. Children constantly ask questions and look at the world with wide eyes because everything is new to them. They absorb everything and approach it with curiosity. Instead of thinking, "I already know this," they wonder, "How interesting, isn't it?" Rediscovering the familiar is a powerful way to see how closely observing something can change your perspective. Approach everyday tasks, commuting, dinner, or preparing for meetings with a beginner's mind. Seek new insights in familiar things and think of this process as a treasure hunt. By adopting the eyes of a traveler and the mindset of a beginner, you notice details you would usually overlook. You set aside assumptions and fully immerse yourself in the world around you. In this receptive mode, you are ready to capture new ideas and insights. As Nobel laureate Linus Pauling famously said, "If you want a good idea, start with a lot of ideas. Asking why accelerates learning." One of the most effective ways to speed up learning is by asking questions. Why? Or what should I do? Questions help cut through surface details and get to the essence of a subject. Doctors ask patients questions constantly to diagnose illnesses. Adding a why or what should I do approach can improve diagnosis and influence treatment decisions. Amanda Simon, a surgeon who recently joined IDEO as medical director, exemplifies this. We can easily imagine an experienced physician confidently evaluating patients and making quick decisions. Amanda explained that for her first design project at IDEO, she needed to conduct fieldwork in a hospital, a setting that felt familiar to her. After finishing a night shift, she joined a colleague to meet a young patient. "I entered the room and said, 'Hello, I'm Dr. Salmon. Can you tell me what's going on?'" Amanda recalls. Normally, clinicians speak in textbook language, which didn't engage the child. Her colleague stepped in, pulled up a chair next to the child, and started a friendly conversation about a game on the child's phone. Watching this, Amanda noticed the child opened up, not just about the illness, but also about family and daily life. Amanda realized she usually focused solely on patient histories and treatment plans, neglecting empathy. "When I go to the hospital, it's hard not to take on the traditional role," Amanda says, "but by approaching it differently, we learned far more than we would have through the usual diagnostic questions." Amanda quickly absorbed what she observed and applied it when called back to the ER. The next patient was an elderly woman who had broken her wrist 3 weeks earlier. Her wrist was still swollen and bruised. Her daughter was frustrated. Normally, Amanda would examine the injury, record the treatment history, and refer to a hand surgeon. This time, however, she noticed issues beyond the wrist. "I usually wouldn't consider family conflicts or care needs as part of my job," Amanda says. But this time, she paused and approached the visit with a non-surgical perspective. She asked personal questions and learned the patient practiced energy healing. A friend had applied energy treatment to her wrist, leading to some improvement, which is why she hadn't sought a doctor. By understanding the patient's reasoning, Amanda could explain why medical intervention was still necessary for a fracture, including the risk of losing wrist flexibility, something that could affect her energy healing practice. Shifting from thinking like a surgeon to thinking like an anthropologist allowed Amanda to form a deeper connection with her patient. It helped her understand motivations and tailor treatment accordingly. Consider how you approach your customers. Are you asking probing questions or just hearing what you expect to hear? Leda Stafford, a former IDEO design researcher with a PhD in cognitive development, has extensive experience asking questions of potential users. She designs questions in playful ways instead of asking, "Why do you like this book?" She might ask, "Imagine you want to convince a friend to read this book. What would you say?" This approach filters out ordinary answers and elicits more meaningful responses. Even challenging questions can overcome cultural or political barriers. For example, when Ko Lita wanted to understand where an inventive approach might encounter organizational resistance, she asked, "Imagine you have an invisible cloak that helps you overcome difficult processes or people. When and where would you use it?" The right question can make all the difference.